Hey, my name is Felipe and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how to train an object detector using Yolov9 on your own custom data. I'm going to show you a very easy and a very quick way to train this object detector from a Google Colab. So you will be able to follow along the entire tutorial and to train this object detector 100% free in a Google Colab. Now let me show you something. This is Yolov9 official repository, but we are not going to use this repository over here, but we are going to use a fork I created from this repository. You can see over here it says forked from the Yolov9 official repository. I created this fork because I needed to create a file, which you can see over here it says yolov9.py. This is a file I created in this fork, and this is a file which is going to make the process of training this object detector much easier, much simpler, much more straightforward, and I'm going to show you exactly how later on this tutorial. For now, just follow along and just remember that I created this file, and this file has a few functions and it has a few classes, which is going to make the process much simpler. Because if we go back to the official repository, to the readme file in the Yolov9 official repository, and if I scroll down, you can see that in the training section over here we have a few examples on how we need to do this training process. What's the file we need to execute, and what are all the arguments we need to input into this file, and what are some values for all these arguments in order to do the training process, right? We have a few very specific examples, and these examples are just great and just amazing, and this is an amazing help in order to use this repository. But if you don't have any background in programming whatsoever, if you don't have any background in programming, in software engineering, in engineering, then this may be a little confusing. This may be a little overwhelming, right? If you don't have any background in programming whatsoever, this is very confusing. You need to execute Python, a file.py, workers, device. This is very strange. This is very confusing if you don't have a background in programming whatsoever. So this is why I decided to create this file in order to help you to train this object detector much easier, right? For now, just remember this is a file we're going to use to make the training process much easier. This is a file I created in order to help you, but obviously this is a file I created in order to help me as well. Because this repository, this technology, Yolov9, oh my god, it's amazing. I'm definitely going to use it later on to train many object detectors, so I want to have a way to do it from a very high level, and I want to have a way to do it much simpler. So this is the repository we are going to use. This is the file I created in this repository, and now let's go to Google Colab, and now let's get started training this object detector. So let me show you this notebook we have over here. You can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cells. So in only 6 steps we will be able to train this object detector. You can see that this looks like a very straightforward process, and trust me, this is going to be very easy, very simple, and we will have completed this process in only a few minutes. We are going to work on Google Colab, but we are also going to work with the Google Drive. Please remember to create a directory in your Google Drive in order to work on this project, because you can see that the first step in this process is to mount Google Drive on this Google Colab. So I'm just going to run this cell, and please remember for now you will need to create a directory in your Google Drive in order to work on this project. I'm going to select my account, and then I'm just going to click on continue and then allow. Okay, so the first step is ready, and you can see that I have mounted Google Drive in this Google Colab notebook, so we are ready in order to continue. Now we will be able to access all the files in our Google Drive, and we will be able to just work with Google Drive, and this is going to be exactly what we need in order to work on this process. Now let's continue to the next cell, and you can see it says prepare data, and this is where we are going to get the data we have in Google Drive, and we're going to copy this data into Google Colab. So let me show you super quickly the data I am going to use in this process. You can see I have this directory over here which is called data, and let me show you something which is super important regarding the data set I am going to use to train this object detector. When you train an object detector or any other type of computer vision model, you obviously need images and you also need annotations, but something which is very important is the file structure of your data, how you to locate all the different files and all the different directories and so on, and the names of all these directories. So the file structure is very important, and let me show you the file structure of the dataset I am going to use to train this model. So you can see I have two directories. One of them is called images and the other one is called labels. Within the images directory is where I have all the images I'm going to use to train this model, and within the labels directory is where I have all the annotations to train this model. Now let me show you. If I open the images directory, you can see I have two additional directories. One of them is called test and the other one is called train. The train directory has all the images I'm going to use to train the model. These are going to be the training images. This is the training data. And within the test directory, these are all the images I'm going to use in order to evaluate the performance of the model. I am not going to use the images within the test directory to train the model, but I'm going to use these images in order to evaluate how it performs once I train the model. So after I train the model, I'm going to take all these images over here and going to see how the model performs. So I have two directories. One of them is called train and the other one is called test. And if I open the labels directory, you can see I have exactly the same structure over here. Two directories. One of them is called train and the other one is called test. Something else which is very important is that for every single one of the files in these directories, I am going to have another file in these directories with exactly the same name but a different extension, right? Let me show you an example. If I open this directory over here, you can see that the first image is called 0A411 and so on, right? A very long name. And if I open this other directory over here, you can see that the first image, the first file is also called 0A411 and so on. So it's exactly the same file name but a different extension. In this case, this is txt. Now let me open this file over here, and these are the annotations for the image, right? For this image. And these annotations are given in the YOLO format. So this is only to show you super quickly the overall structure of the dataset I am going to use in order to train this model. This is very important. Please remember to structure the data like this, otherwise you may have some challenges when you train your own object detector. Now let me show you something else which is also very important regarding the data, and it's this file I have over here which is called data.yaml. Let me open this file and you can see this is a configuration file with a few keys, and this is where I have specified the location of my data. You can see I have three keys. One of them is path, then the other one is train, and the other one is ball. Path is the absolute path of where the data is located, and then train and ball are the relative paths of where the training images and the validation images, or in this case the test images, which is the same, where these are located, right? So this is very important, and if this is the first time you train your own object detector, I invite you to just put all the data into the exact format you can see over here with all the names you can see over here, test, train, and so on. And then if you do exactly the same as I am doing over here, you can just leave these values like they are right now, right? You don't need to change anything. You can just use everything like this and everything is going to work just fine, right? So that's my recommendation for you in case this is the first time you train this object detector with Yolov9. Just follow along and just put everything into the exact same structure as me, and everything is going to work just fine. Most likely everything is going to work just fine. Then let me show you something else regarding this YAML file, this configuration file, which is all the classes I am going to detect with this dataset. And in my case, you can see I have only one class, which is duck, because I show you the overall structure of my dataset, but I didn't really show you the images themselves, right? Let me show you super quickly. You can see that these are images of ducks, because in my case, I'm going to train an object detector to detect ducks. So this is only to show you super quickly the images I'm going to use in order to train this object detector. So just remember to change this value over here and to put all the class names, all the categories of all the objects you are going to detect with your object detector, with your dataset. So this is pretty much all for the file, for this data.yaml file, and this is pretty much all for the data I am going to use in this tutorial. So I have compressed this directory and I have created this file over here, which which is data.zip. And then I have already uploaded this file and also these two files over here, data.zip and data.yaml. I have uploaded these files into this directory in my Google Drive. Please remember to do exactly the same with your data. Please remember to just upload all the data to the directory you have created in your Google Drive. Now let's continue, because now we can just follow to the next step in this process, which is copying all this data from my Google Drive into this Google Colab environment. Let's continue. Okay, and that's pretty much all. I have copied all this file and I have also unzipped the content of this file. I have uncompressed all its content, and now this data directory is in this Google Colab environment. A very quick note I'm going to say regarding the data is that if you are creating your own object detector, your own custom object detector, you probably already have the data you are going to use in order to train this model. But if you are looking for another dataset you can use in order to train your object detector, I recommend you to take a look at the Google Open Images dataset version 7. This is an amazing dataset with I don't know how many categories, I don't know how many annotations. Let me show you just a few of them. For example, you can see that this is a random category, slow cooker, but if I show you other categories, we also have accordion, we have alpaca, animal, ant, antelope, apple, armadillo, and so on, right? So please take a look at this dataset, and in case you decide to use this dataset in order to train your own object detector, I invite you to take a look at one of my previous videos where I show you the entire process of how to download data from the Google Open Images dataset version 7. I show you how to download data from this dataset, and I also give you a couple of scripts, a couple of Python scripts you can use in order to download this data, and these scripts are just going to make everything much simpler and much more straightforward and so on, and you will be able to download a dataset into the exact format you need in order to train this object detector. So in case you want to use these scripts, these Python scripts I give you in this video, the only thing you need to do is to input all the categories you want to download, and you need to press enter, and that's going to be pretty much all in order to download the data into the exact format you need in order to train this object detector. And this previous video is available in my Patreon, so it's available to all my Patreon supporters. In case it helps you, I invite you to take a look at this dataset, at the Google Open Images dataset version 7, and also to this previous video, in case it helps you. And if it helps you, go ahead and use it, and if it doesn't help you, then don't use it. Then now let's continue with this process. We have already mounted Google Drive into this Google Colab environment. We have already copied all the data into this Google Drive, and now let's continue with the next step in this process, which is cloning this repository, and then we are just going to continue with this process, right? You can see that we are cloning the repository I forked, right? You can see we are in computer vision in Yolov9, so this is this one over here, right? This is the one I forked from the Yolov9 official repository. Now let's continue. This was very easy. Now the only thing we need to do is to install all the requirements. So I'm just going to execute this cell over here. Okay, and that's pretty much all. We have installed all the requirements, and now we can continue with the next step in this process, which is training the model. So we are almost there. We have almost completed this process, and you can see how quickly everything goes, right? You can see how straightforward this process is. We have already completed 4 steps in this process, and now the only thing we need to do is to train the model. So let me show you. This is where we are going to use this file I created, Yolov9.py, and this is where we are going to use all the classes and all the code and so on. So let me show you something of this file. You can see over here I have created a class which is Yolov9, which is an abstract class with 2 methods. One of them is called train and the other one is called predict. And then we also have 3 child classes. One of them is Yolov9 object detection, then Yolov9 instance segmentation, and Yolov9 panoptic segmentation. And if we go back to the Google Colab again, you can see that I'm creating a new instance of Yolov9 and the input is object detection. So if I go back here, you can see that I'm returning a new instance of Yolov9 object detection, and this is going to help us a lot, because then the only thing we need to do is to call model.train. We need to specify the location of the data we are going to use in order to train the model, and that's it. That's the only thing we need to do in order to train this object detector with Yolov9. So this is exactly how we are going to use all the code we have in this file in order to make this process much easier, much simpler, and much more straightforward. So the only thing I'm going to do now, once I have just created my data and installed all my requirements and so on, the only thing I'm going to do is to press enter, and that's it. This is how I'm going to train an object detector with Yolov9. And please mind this detail, I'm going to train this model for only 10 epochs. Most likely this is not going to be enough in order to train a very robust object detector. This is not going to be enough in order to have like a very accurate detection. No, this is not going to be enough. Most likely we will need to train for much longer, for much more epochs. But remember, this tutorial is only to show you how the overall process looks like. So I am going to train this model for only 10 epochs, only to show you how it works, right? But hold your expectations, because this is not going to be a very robust model. This is not going to be a very good object detector. In order to make it work better, we will need to train for much longer. But let's take one step at a time. You can see over here we are training this object detector, and I'm going to resume this video once the training process is completed. Okay, now the training process has been completed. You can see that all the results have been saved here in this directory, which is the runs directory. So the only thing we need to do next is to execute this cell, which is called copy results, and this is going to take care of copying the entire runs directory into our Google Drive. Actually, we are going to compress this directory first. We are going to create this file, which is runs.zip, and then we are going to copy this file into our Google Drive. So this is perhaps the easiest way to get all the results from the training process, to get all the files which were created in order to evaluate the performance of the model we trained, and also to get all the weights of the model we trained, right? This is perhaps the easiest way to get all the data we have in this directory. So the only thing I'm going to do now is to press enter, and this is going to take care of copying the entire file. So you can see that we have this error over here. In case you have a similar error, the only thing you need to do is to restart your runtime, and then you can try again, and that should be pretty much all in order to execute this cell. So now let me show you. If I go back to my Google Drive, you can see that this is the runs.zip file we have just copied from Google Drive. The only thing I'm going to do now is to download this file, and now I'm going to show you how this file looks like. So I'm going to download the file over here. And you can see that we have all the results from this training process exactly over here. And remember what I told you a few minutes ago, that this tutorial is only to show you how to train this model in a Google Colab, but this is a very dummy training, because we train this model for only 10 epochs, so most likely this is not going to perform as well as we will expect, right? This is a very dummy training, only to show you the overall process of training a model in a Google Colab. But if I show you the performance of the model I just trained, let me show you this image over here. These are a few examples of the test data, of the data we are using in order to evaluate the performance of this model. You can see that these are all the annotations and so on. Now if I open this other image, you can see that this is the performance of the model we train, and we are not detecting any duck whatsoever. So this means that the model we just trained doesn't really perform very well, right? This is something I told you before we trained the model, right? This was only a very quick tutorial in order to show you how to train this object detector, but I told you that this was a very dummy training for only 10 epochs, and if I would like to have a much better performance, if I would like to train a much more robust object detector, I will train this model for something like 100 epochs, and I will have have a much better performance for sure. Google Colab is an amazing tool we can use in machine learning to train machine learning models. We have free GPU, we have free resources. This is an amazing tool, but Google Colab also comes with a lot of restrictions, and one of these restrictions is how much time we have to train these models, and usually we only have a few hours in order to work on a GPU in Google Colab. So depending on your project, depending on your dataset, depending on your everything, a few hours may be enough or a few hours may not be enough. So in case a few hours is enough in order to train your computer vision model, in case all the restrictions we have in Google Colab do not affect you in any way whatsoever, then just go ahead and train your own object detector on your own custom data in a Google Colab exactly as I show you, and everything is going to work just fine. Most likely everything is going to work just fine. But in case your dataset or your project or your whatever, in case you need more time in order to train your model, like it's my case with my dataset, or in case you just want to train your computer vision model without so many restrictions, I invite you to take a look at other of my previous videos where I show you the entire process on an EC2 instance in AWS. I show you how to launch a GPU-based EC2 instance in AWS, and I show you how to do the entire training process over there, and this is going to be a much better way to do it because we are not going to have all these restrictions we have with Google Colab. So please take a look at that video over there. Obviously that using an EC2 instance in AWS is not free, but this is a very good solution to train an object detector nevertheless. And also I invite you to take a look at my other videos with Yolov9 because I show you how to make inferences with an object detector we trained with Yolov9, how to train an instance segmentation model with Yolov9, and many different projects using this amazing and very powerful framework which is Yolov9. So definitely take a look at my other videos with Yolov9. And this is going to be all for today. My name is Felipe, I'm a computer vision engineer, and see you on my next video.